Hey, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and I'm starting a little mini series today. Y'all saw Rivera speak at all of the Super Bowl stuff that's going on. He talked to Julie Donaldson. He talked to a few people from NFL Network and things like that. And he said some really big, important things that I'm very surprised aren't going crazy viral, at the very least amongst the Commanders community, especially like online, Twitter, and things like that. And I want to take the time to really dive into each major thing he said by giving it a separate video, a separate episode in itself. But again, there's probably going to be like 5 parts to this. He talked everything QB as far as Sam Howell being QB1 and whether or not we're even going to try to get a top quarterback in the free agency market, like a Derek Carr or anything like that. He talked about Chase Young's 5th-year option and Deron Payne. That's going to be another video. He talked about the priorities and what he's looking for in an offensive coordinator and what's going on with Eric Bieniemy, when they plan on interviewing him, and when they may even plan on making a decision on offensive coordinator. Also, a big update on the whole Dan Snyder selling the team situation, how much he wants, and if Jeff Bezos is in the lead or not, and when it should be expected to be sold. And Rivera spoke on that a little bit as well. He also spoke on Chris Harris officially going to the Titans, and then Charles London, a potential offensive coordinator candidate here, also going to the Titans. So now that's somebody that's off the board for us as an option. So we got to talk about all of this, but again, I'm gonna split it up because I feel like all of these deserve their very own video so I can dive all the way into it rather than just doing like a quick skim of each thing. So y'all stay patient with me. This video, I want to start out with everything quarterback. Everything that he talked about quarterback wise, I feel like we got to dive into it, man. I think this is a great time to do it. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, make sure you pull up every Sunday for the call-in live stream where I open up the phone lines for y'all to call in. You voice your opinions. You ask whatever questions you may have. Again, you're part of the show. You're heard throughout the YouTube live stream just like I am. So make sure y'all call in and do whatever you got to do. We talk quarterback, offensive coordinator, free agency, draft. We have debate topics. We talk anything football, even if it's outside of the Commanders. We talk about other sports if you have questions about that as well, or opinions on that type of stuff. If you want to pull up and talk about Kyrie, you can. So make sure you pull up every Sunday for the call-in show. It's really a show for y'all to voice y'all opinions. Y'all hear me talk every day in these videos. I feel like the live stream is a good place to give y'all the opportunity to voice y'all's thoughts. So without further ado, let's get it. All right, so let's get to it, man. This man Rivera talked about everything quarterback. Like pretty much any question you could potentially have about quarterback, Ron Rivera made sure that he addressed it. First of all, here's a clip of him talking about Sam Howell. He was asked whether or not Sam Howell could be QB1 for this team, and Rivera basically said kinda yes. So it sounds like Sam Howell is assumed to be QB1 going into this offseason. OTAs, minicamps, training camps. He's basically the quarterback to beat.
Ron, looking ahead, do you think your starting quarterback week 1 is on your roster right now?
Well, I think he most certainly can be. I know this. We will go into OTAs minicamp and training camp with Sam Howell more likely QB1, and we'll see what happens. I mean, it's his opportunity. This is a challenge to him. You know, if he comes out and does the things that he's capable of, we believe he's capable of, he can most certainly be our guy. But we'll find out. And again, that's what competition is going to do. It's going to bring out the best in all our guys.
Now, you never know. Things could change. You have absolutely no idea what may go on. A new offensive coordinator may want to bring in their own veteran quarterback, at the very least to be a backup to Sam Howell. And then if he just so happens to outplay Sam Howell in training camp or maybe even preseason or something like that, then maybe he takes over as a starter. Doubt it. Really hope that doesn't happen. At this point, Sam Howell should be your QB1, and you should spend the entire offseason building around him. In free agency, doing everything you got to do to fix his offensive line. In the draft, doing everything you got to do to fix his offensive line, which means taking an offensive lineman, preferably a tackle, in the first or in the second round at the very latest. I'm pretty sure we're not going to be able to get like an Orlando Brown, but there's some other names out there. It's a pretty weak offensive line free agency class in general compared to other years, other free agency cycles. but there's still some names out there that we could definitely take a look at. And please don't try to put like a band-aid like an Andrew Norwell or a Trey Turner over it this time. I mean, it was kind of nice to see what you can get potential-wise for cheap out of these guys. We've learned our lesson. It's time to move on and bring in some dependable guys. Even though I feel like, honestly, you move Samuel Cosmi from right tackle to right guard, and then you give Chase Roulier another year to prove himself, but you make sure you draft center within the first 4 rounds to have that guy already being groomed to be a starting center next year, because I'm just not confident in Chase Roulier staying healthy this entire season. And so you may want to go ahead and get that potential franchise center that you can groom behind him, and he can be working towards becoming the starter throughout the season. And if Chase Roulier gets hurt, maybe he is thrown in as the starter at some point this season and is already getting meaningful snaps to develop. And then left guard wise, I saw enough from Chris Paul against the Dallas Cowboys to know that at the very least he should be potentially even the leader for the starting left guard spot. Don't just hand it to him and just assume he's going to be a starting left guard going into this upcoming 2023 regular season. But I think he's definitely one of the leaders and should be considered heavily for that position. I would be very comfortable with him at left guard. I would like that more than what I've saw from Andrew Norwell or Trey Turner throughout the entire season. Now, granted, Andrew Norwell had his moments of being pretty good, and Trey Turner, you can say that he was banged up for a lot of the bad times that he was having. But Chris Paul's a 7th round pick, and it looks like for him to potentially be a starting left guard for you is insane value in itself and cheap. And then left tackle, I say honestly, Charles Leno, you ultimately end up probably moving him to right tackle, and then either you sign your starting left tackle in free agency or you draft one within the first 2 rounds, preferably the first round. That's just my opinion though. That was just my little spiel. Let's get back to Ron Rivera. John Keim tweeted, just wrapped up a conversation with Ron Rivera, reiterated that Howell will go into OTA workouts as the QB to beat, said they will not spend big capital like last year on quarterback, and that's huge, man. That is very big. Mike Florio basically asked him the same thing. So Florio, will Washington look for a vet starter? Ron said no. Florio, no Wentz-like move? Ron Rivera said, in terms of finding a guy you're going to have to spend a lot of capital on, no, we're not looking for a guy that we've got to spend a lot of capital on. So basically, we can expect the team, like I said, especially like the new offensive coordinator, whoever he comes in as, whoever that is probably going to bring some type of vet quarterback to make sure that the offense can at the very least run some type of smooth with some sort of a floor, just in case Sam Howell doesn't work out or he gets hurt or whatever. So I'm expecting us to bring in some sort of a veteran quarterback. I don't think it's going to end up being Taylor Heineke getting brought back. I like Taylor Heineke as a backup, love him as a backup, but I just think the next offensive coordinator may not want to deal with that, and I think Taylor Heineke is probably looking for more money than what the Commanders may be willing to give him. But who knows? Maybe that's not true. And Greg Paulson brings up a good point. Bring in a nice little backup veteran, a true number 2 type who can help Sam Howell's development. They'll have a competition in camp with air quotes, like a very slick competition, not a real one. And of course, Howell will probably get the best chance to win. I mean, first of all, with his already prior chemistry with the receivers, even though it's not much, he only got to start 1 game. But some of the throws he was making there, especially the deep ones, and then especially like the slant routes where guys were able to catch the ball without losing their stride and be able to get yardage because of the touch on the pass, it looked like Sam Howell had been throwing to those guys as a starting quarterback all season. I mean, that was one of the most impressive things about Sam Howell's game against the Cowboys for me. I mean, the running was great. The big arm was great, but most notably the accuracy and the touch on passes with receivers that he hasn't thrown the ball to that much. And remember, he only completed like 11 passes in that game. He doesn't have a lot of reps, and yet he looked that good. So I'm expecting him to definitely win this training camp battle, potentially with whatever quarterback we bring in. And again, it's already predestined for him to win it. Ron Rivera's already said that it looks like Sam Howell's going to be the guy, and I'm pretty sure the veteran quarterback that they bring in wouldn't even threaten Howell's job. But at the same time, you don't want to just declare Sam Howell as your starting QB going into the 2023 season. You want him to kind of earn it and to work his tail off to get it. You know what I'm saying? So no veteran we bring in is going to be any real threat to Sam Howell, which is really interesting. That's big news. I'm surprised again that I'm not seeing a lot of these headlines around much more. That means no Derek Carr. I think that's big news in itself. Not pursuing Derek Carr, not pursuing any of these top quarterbacks. I mean, with Ron Rivera at the Pebble Beach golf thing, everybody was like, oh, could he be trying to recruit Aaron Rodgers? He's over there with Aaron Rodgers and things like that. But my thing was, there were a lot of celebrities there, period. I mean, even Kyle Allen was there, so that didn't necessarily mean anything. And then we saw that he literally drove from the Pebble Beach golf tournament to go interview Anthony Lynn in person in the Bay Area. in San Francisco. So if anything, the Pebble Beach golf thing was, first of all, just one way to have fun. You saw him and Bill Murray embrace each other because of his Bears days and things like that. So that was really cool to see. I posted that video on my channel as well. But it looks like, if anything, outside of the Pebble Beach golf game, the reason he went to it was more of a Anthony Lynn thing than an Aaron Rodgers thing. So it just sounds like we're not going after any of these guys. I mean, when he was talking to Mike Florio, who's basically like, I'm not making this Carson Wentz mistake again. But what's really interesting, and WrestleMania of the Locked On Commanders podcast brought up a good point. He tweeted, Ron preached and preached about a legitimate QB competition in his first 2 years. It never ever had one single QB battle, like a real one ever. Did it with Dwayne in 20, Fitzpatrick in 21, and then he didn't even bother to try to fake it with Wentz last year. He was just given the job. And then now Sam Howell, this fake QB competition that he's doing, it is a really ugly pattern. But at the same time, the other three, yeah, you may have wanted to have like a legitimate QB battle, but this one, this is the time that he's right. This time, let Sam Howell have it, man. I want him to have somewhat of a fake QB battle so he can feel like he has to go out there and earn it and work harder to get it. But there's no reason any veteran that we bring in here should be able to compete with Sam Howell, because either we're spending too much capital, too much money, too many draft picks, potentially like a Derek Carr, to get a veteran quarterback, and that's just not worth it at all. Or we're bringing in a veteran quarterback that should have no chance of beating Sam Howell in training camp anyway, like some Teddy Bridgewater type of guy that I'm not passionate about at all. So again, every year Ron Rivera acts like we're gonna have some type of QB battle, and then we never actually really do. It's just fake. But hey, again, this time around, this fourth time around, this is the right move to make. This is the time to have a fake QB battle. This is Sam Howell's team, honestly. And Al Galdi also brought up a great point as well. He said, it's true that very few day 2/3 QBs become quality QB1s, but it's also true that Sam Howell isn't like most day 2/3 QBs. And that's a great point, man. This guy was projected to be potentially the best quarterback in this upcoming class if he would have went the year before. Going into the 2021 season, people thought Sam Howell would be QB1 going into the 2022 draft. And he lost a lot of his weapons, most notably like De'Ami Brown, who's on the Commanders right now with him. Running back talent, it just seemed like everybody left him, and he still had a great year. I feel like, if anything, that year was a little bit more impressive, because with his loss of skill position players, he was like, well, somebody got to run the ball. So then he turned into more of a running quarterback. He had legs the year before, but his final season at UNC, you could argue he was the best running quarterback in college football. At the very least, like vision-wise and break tackle-wise, maybe not speed and agility, but as far as making something out of nothing, he had to rebrand himself. And I felt like, if anything, that was even more impressive than a lot of the other things he did well. Again, I'm not the biggest Sam Howell fan, but I think that's definitely very noteworthy. And again, I agree with Al Galdi that I know a lot of people like to say he is a 5th round pick as a quarterback, and you should never make franchise changing plans around a 5th round pick quarterback. But we got to remember, he technically really isn't a 5th round pick quarterback. We were lucky to get him there. Remember, Jonathan Allen was supposed to be like a top 5, top 8 pick in his draft. Then the arthritis things came up, and we ended up getting him way later than that. It's a similar situation, not exactly the same, but just because you get a guy in the 5th round does not mean he's good. I agree with Al Galdi when he says Sam Howell should not be lumped in with all of these other non-first round QBs. He has first round QB talent, and I believe we can move forward with that assumption and make plans around that. We saw it against the Cowboys. That man gave them boys fits, and he didn't even pass the ball much, but when he did, it was beautiful. And then when he ran the ball, it was better than anything we saw from Taylor Heineke or Carson Wentz as far as running goes, by far. I mean, breaking tackles, juking people out their socks. I wouldn't say Sam Howell's fast. You could argue that him and Taylor Heineke have probably the same speed, but one thing that a lot of people don't notice is, first of all, we all notice that he breaks tackles more than Taylor Heineke. He's built bigger, literally built like coming into OTAs. Sam Howell and Brian Robinson were the exact same weight and height. I remember pointing that out and being like, wow, that's crazy. Now, Brian Robinson got a little bit bigger than him at some point before the season started, but just know that Brian Robinson, our bruising running back that played for Alabama and was running all over the SEC without fumbling, Sam Howell is that same type of size. But the really underrated part about Sam Howell that separates him from Taylor Heineke, and especially Carson Wentz running the ball, because I mean, this season I was faster than Carson Wentz, but it's his agility. That man jump cuts almost like a running back, like going from right to left. Taylor Heineke and Carson Wentz can't move laterally like that, especially that quick and having that type of change of direction ability and things like that. That's one thing really underrated about Sam Howell's running ability. So I'm really excited about the future of Sam Howell. I feel like of a offensive coordinator, potential offensive coordinator comes in here and basically designs the same offense that the Falcons ran, if you want to run the ball that much, or what the Eagles are doing with Jalen Hurts. I mean, I feel like Jalen Hurts is balling out and playing very well, but the Eagles have done everything in their power to make this offense as easy as possible for him. Not to take anything away from Jalen Hurts, but more so to complement Sam Howell's traits and tools. I mean, he may not be as fast as Jalen Hurts, but you could argue he could probably break more tackles. And then he definitely has a stronger arm. But then again, Jalen Hurts is older. He's been in NFL longer, so he knows how to run an NFL offense a little bit better at this point. But coming out of college, I definitely assumed Sam Howell would be the better quarterback if they were coming out the same age. Not trying to say that Sam Howell's automatically going to be as great as Jalen Hurts, but I'm just trying to let you know why I can envision an offense being very explosive and dominant when in the time of possession with his legs in our running game with Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, and then hitting deep shots to Terry Jahan and Curtis Samuel off the play action like we saw against the Cowboys, running some read option like we saw against the Cowboys. Finally, this offense can be different. And that takes me back to my first point and kind of my last point for this video is that, man, just go ahead and build around this guy, man. Rivera has basically made it known that they're not going to go after a top veteran quarterback like a Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers, which is, again, really big news. And then they also sound like they're not going after any first-round quarterbacks, so no trade up for Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, no taking Will Levis or Anthony Richardson if they fall to us. It is Sam Howell's show. Build around him with the offensive line. Make sure he has everything that he needs. Make sure you get him the right offensive coordinator. The receivers and running backs are already here. We may want to take a look at upgrading tight end as well, but the priority is offensive line right now. And if you give Sam Howell better blocking than even what he had against the Cowboys, it can get real ugly for these other teams, especially in the NFC. Because at the end of the day, with as good as our defense is, and elite at times, especially when healthy, and with as good as our skill position players are, all you got to literally do is come in here and be just slightly better than Taylor Heinicke and Carson Wentz. And we should make the playoffs. We should have made the playoffs last year if Taylor Heinicke wasn't so bad, if Carson Wentz wasn't even worse, and if the offensive line wasn't absolutely atrocious. And then we just fired Scott Turner as our offensive coordinator. So whoever we bring in, we're just going to assume they're at the very least a slightly better play caller. So literally, Sam Howell doesn't even have to be this game-changing top 10 quarterback like a Pat Mahomes or a Justin Herbert. You simply just have to come in here and be better than Taylor Heinicke and Carson Wentz, and I honestly feel like that's not that difficult to do for real. So build around him and have some fun. He may not necessarily make us a Super Bowl contender just yet, but at the very least we should be strong playoff contenders and a team that nobody wants to play, because when you're able to control the time of possession and to have a defense this explosive, especially Chase Young gets like Chase Young, like the way he's supposed to, and we keep Daron Payne and Cameron Curl still doing what he does and his effect on the defense, making Derek Forrest look like an all-pro whenever he's on the field next to him, and Benjamin St. Juste is healthy, and we address corner in the draft, first or second round. I honestly think it doesn't make any sense to go anything other than offensive line or cornerback in the first 2 rounds. Whichever one you want to do, offensive line in the first round, corner in the second round, or corner in the first round, offensive line in the second round. I just don't really see anything else making sense at this point for us. So say you end up getting Christian Gonzalez in the first round and Darnell Wright in the second or something like that. This team is easily playoff bound with the potential to be greater. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know if about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. As always, man, I appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose names you scrolling on the screen right now. Y'all already know I am a big Anthony Richardson fan, but it just doesn't make sense for this team to draft a guy like that, like I said in my previous video. But man, make sure y'all stay tuned. Of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video, especially what Ron Rivera had to say about potentially bringing in a quarterback to compete with Sam Howell. And of course, man, I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.